Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy Tobias Hendra, and I am a final year student at the School of Business and Management of Institut Teknologi Bandung. Today I'll be presenting about my final project titled as Minimizing Costs by Optimizing the Hiring Locations of a Shipping Company Using the Transportation Model. This final project was supervised by Mrs. Desi Anisha. So let's begin. So about the presentation itself, the structure will go as you can see in the agenda overview, where I'll be talking about the background first, which is an introduction, the case study, since this is based on a real company in Indonesia, the research questions and objectives. Of course, after that, I'll be talking about the company itself. And in chapter 3 is where I'll be talking about the analysis, basically how I collected the data, what type of methods will be used for the analysis, and in chapter 4 is where I'll be talking about the results. And chapter 5 is where I will draw a conclusion based on the results of the analysis. So first things first is the background. So the company, which we'll be talking about, is within the maritime industry. It is a shipping company, and being in the maritime industry, which is considered as the backbone of the economy, carrying out 80% of the global trade. Uh, a shipping company is within the shipping sector, of course, is basically a company that transports one thing from one place to another. Those things can be oil, gas, natural resources, human resources, and other different things as well. And the shipping sector specifically, they're facing this problem right now where they're starting to incur high operational costs, which is becoming quite problematic as it's making the entire sector more stagnant than growing. So there are definitely different factors into why their costs are rising, but one of them is crewing, which we will be talking about mostly in this presentation. And basically, this entire idea of this background is that this final project will explore the problems of a shipping company in Indonesia that has a high crewing cost problem, and we are trying to help them to optimize it. Okay, so next, which is about the case study. This case study is about PT Bato, which is an alias that I used as the company, the real company, wished to remain anonymous for the entire study and any type of presentation that I would do on the company. So I use an alias known as, which is Pete Bato. So in the case study, Pete Bato is basically trying to improve their operational efficiency across all of its units, where not suddenly, but um, the general manager asked, okay, let's see the crewing division as we want to expand in there as well. And they found out that the crewing division during the period of January to June 2024 has been incurring significantly high costs. And after several analysis, they found out, oh, it's because they've been hiring crew members from inefficient hiring locations, which means that they're taking one person from one place to another place, which is very far and it's very costly. So yes, the crewing divisions are told to, okay, let's find the most optimal hiring locations and minimize our costs and be as efficient as possible. That's basically the case study. And from this case study, from the problem that is posed in the case study, you can find the research questions and research objectives. There are several new variables here, which I will explain. Home base being where the crew members are taken from, and destinations being where the crew members are going to. As for supply is basically how many crew members are available in each respective home base, and for demand is how many crew members are needed in each destination. So research questions that I got from the case study is what are the actual transportation costs for each crew members to reach their destination and home base? What are total supply and demand for each home base and destination? How many crew members should be transported from the optimal chosen locations to the end destinations? And finally, what is the new total minimized cost of the transportation cost of the entire and that's basically um, what's the minimized cost. And from here, you can get the objective of trying to find and answer each questions, basically finding the total transportation cost, finding the supply and demand, to find the amount of crew members that should be transported from each locations, and to minimize the cost of transportation. And yeah, so next is we'll be talking about the company itself. The company was founded in 1989 in Indonesia. It was at first a shipping agency company where they were working together with international shipping companies so they can work in Indonesia. But then in 2008, they they purchased a vessel where they finally took a step into the oil and gas scene of the shipping industry. And in those 8 years, they expanded and expanded where they were able to go public in 2016, sorry. And after that, they just kept on expanding their fleet, their operational abilities, and of course, their services. And currently, they're in the vessel chartering business, where they charter to business. They are chartered by businesses from all over Asia, mostly from Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and China. And how this company works is basically they find a contract with said charter. Charters are basically those who companies that will be using the services of PT Batu. um, yes, and then after that, the vessel will be inspected to make sure that it's up to all of the needs of the charterer. It will be delivered to the charterer, and according to the contract, if the company are to operate and manage the vessel during the charter contract, they will do that. They will inspect the vessel and they will develop the vessel as well, which means they will give additional shipping and operational services. And at the very end, it will be reimbursed and invoiced to the charterer. A very simple business process, but very, very complex when um, during the operational um, term. So next is the primary data and secondary data on how I got them. So about the primary data is that I interviewed the general manager and purchasing staff and purchasing supervisor to gain an idea about the company itself, as it's very limited in their website. As for the secondary data, I got the data itself straight from the people in the company, as I was an intern there for 3 months and I was working on this as well with the crewing division, and I got the approval to do it. However, I have to keep the company anonymous. I use journals, books, websites, and news to find the analysis methods, background information, and company analysis. As for the data set, there are 700 different entries, over 700 different entries in the data set. Um, that's from the period of January to June of 2024. Three of the most important and used variables are the route, ticket cost, and description. And here is basically just a picture of the first 20 entries. So next is the analysis methodology that I used. There are two types of analysis: descriptive analysis and linear programming. I use descriptive analysis to find the total transportation costs and the supply and demand. The supply and demand, which will be used in linear programming as the constraints. In linear programming, I use the transportation model, and it is the most um, perfect model for this entire case study. It basically talks about how to optimize either your costs or your profit, minimize costs or maximize profit, while at the same time supplying all the demands, transporting one person to another place. Yeah. And next is the analysis itself, the results. So from the descriptive analysis, this is the top 10 most expensive route that I received. The idea of this analysis was to find the total cost of each route. However, I took the initiative to find the top 10 most expensive routes as well. Here you can find that the Jakarta to Makassar route is the most expensive with 71 million, while there are a total of four, including the Jakarta and Makassar route, that are above 50 million, including Sorong Makassar, Surabaya and Jakarta, Jambi and Jakarta. So next is the result not the results yet, but how I did the linear programming transportation model is that first I have to explain the demand and supply variable here. So we got that from the descriptive analysis from doing a count of the home base and the destination. As you can see here, both of these will total up to 510 with supply being 518 because they need to be the same or more as a demand. The chosen locations are chosen because they basically cover up most of the entire um, operational activities during the January to June period. As you can see here, I talked about, it's 510, the count for just the demand, basically how many destinations count are there, and the total count was around 720, which means that this is already 70% of the entire operations. Okay, so how this matrix works is basically home base is basically where they're from and destination is where they're going, and here are the average prices to get from that place to another and vice versa. So let's say from Jakarta to Ambon it will take 1.8, and Ambon to Jakarta it will take of course 1.8 as well. Here below is the objective function. Since our objective is to minimize cost, this is basically the function, the average cost multiplied by x, which is how many crew members should be taken from home base to the destination. And yeah, and they will be summed up together to find the minimized cost. Here on the right are the constraints, the very top constraints until, yeah, basically those who have um, a less than or equal to sign is talking about the constraint that um, it needs to be less or equal to the supplies that are supplied here. Whereas below, where they have an equal sign, is talking about how it needs to equal to the demand. It can't be less, it can't be more. Next is the results of the analysis here from the matrix. You can see the results of how many crew members should be taken from the home base to destination. Here you can see Jakarta will send 90 people to Jakarta and 130 people to Jambi. Makassar will send 47 people to Ambon, 50 people to Jakarta, and 35 people to Palembang, and 4 people to Surabaya. And Medan will send 28 people to Palembang, while the rest will send all of their supplies to Surabaya, with Semarang sending 34, Solo sending 29, and Surabaya sending 63. I made a visualization to make it easier to see, but I won't talk much about this as it's already been talked about in the previous slide. Now, the most important part is the total minimized objective cost to understand did it actually minimize the cost or not. Well, the total up minimized cost is 507 million rupiah. So did it minimize or not? We can check on the next slide. So the original total cost was 701 million rupiah. 701, I got this number from adding up the total cost of the chosen locations. And you can see it's not, the original total cost is 1 billion rupiah. However, since we didn't use all the locations and we only chose some, the total cost will be 701 million rupiah, which is already 70% of the entire total cost. And so from 701 million rupiah, it was decreased to 507 million rupiah, which is a total decrease of 27.72% or 194 million rupiah. So yes, it worked. The transportation model was able to minimize the cost. And for the conclusion is basically I recommend the company to strengthen themselves in areas that they are lacking in, especially in their crewing division, where they can use the transportation model and modify it to the needs of the crewing division. Since there was a lot of assumptions here, like the crew members being of the same level, and many other assumptions were made here as information was limited from the company. The crewing division of said company should take that into consideration and actually use them to optimize their operational activities. So yeah, here are all the references that I used for this entire project and analysis. And so yeah, thank you for listening.